Hi, Parvati. Thanks for coming on and talking with me today.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
So, you've had a fascinating life and have been around some incredible people, including Ram Dass and Neem Karoli Baba, also known as Maharajji. Recently, you released Whisper in the Heart, just a collection of stories about Maharajji and how people have connected with him, both in person and without meeting him, which I thought was really interesting. For a little bit of background, could you introduce yourself, your work, how this book came about, and what you were striving to share?
Sure. Well, I first went to India in 1971 after having met Ram Dass in 1969. And I've been totally blown away by the amount of light he was carrying and wanted to know where he had gotten it from and to meet the source. And so I spent that year in India and spent a lot of time with Neem Karoli Baba. And during the time that I had stayed with Ram Dass in 1969, I had become his secretary.
Mhm.
And then when I met Maharajji, Maharajji said, "Well, you're not Ram Dass's secretary anymore, you're mine." So I consider the books that I have worked on that are about him to be sort of my role as a secretary, so to speak. The first book I did was called Love Everyone. That was from 2015. And that was the story of, I interviewed over 70 of the Westerners who had gone to India and been with Neem Karoli in the body. And that's what that book was about. But then there were so many people who had experiences with Maharajji without ever having met him physically, and after he had left the body, that I then did Whisper in the Heart, because those are all stories of people who have had experiences with Maharajji since he left his body. So that's sort of how that book came to
Fascinating.
be.
So, working
Yeah.
as his secretary, what did that look
Yeah.
like?
You mean from Ram Dass or from Maharajji?
Maharajji.
Well, all the work I have done, I've done a lot of editing of the books and putting together the books that are about him from different devotees. From some of the Indian devotees like K.K. Sah, we did Deva Bhumi, Dadan Mukherjee, we did several books, By His Grace and The Near and the Dear, Krishna Das's book, Chance of a Lifetime. I mean, I've worked on all of these books that are related to him, and that's where I feel my role has been.
Yeah.
And I call it, private secretary because that's what Maharajji called me.
Yeah. Uh, so he's described as being a guru. I think sometimes that term can be a little vague,
Uh-huh.
depending and have different definitions depending on who you're talking about or what tradition. In this
Right.
tradition, what does it mean for somebody to be a guru?
Well, quite literally, guru means a remover of darkness. That's the literal translation of it. So, I mean, here in the West, of course, we have golf gurus and we have, you
Yeah,
know,
right.
things like that. But in India, and the term guru is a relationship with your spiritual connection. It's your gateway through. And he is the one that is the remover of dark. He or she is the one that is the one removing the darkness for you. And there's two levels of that guru relationship. One is there are upagurus who are people who show you the way, like your golf guru who shows you how to play golf,
Yeah.
or a spiritual teacher that gives you certain practices but is not themselves a fully enlightened being,
Hmm.
but they have helped you along the path. So
Hmm.
those are upagurus. Somebody like Maharajji is a sat guru. Sat means truth. Sat means, so a sat guru is the one who is the way, not who shows you the way. It's the one who embodies what that
Yeah.
means. Yeah.
That
So does that
that's
help?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It does. So because one of the things that I've heard about him is that he wasn't he didn't provide very detailed instructions. He was kind of
To
just
say the least.
okay, okay. So in learning from him, could you touch on what that was like his instruction style?
Right, because his teaching was not intellectual.
Yeah.
In other words, if you wanted to learn about Hinduism or Patanjali's yoga aphorisms or, any of the sort of dharmic or Vedic things, you didn't go to him. That's not what you went to him for. Okay? It was living in the presence of love and experiencing unconditional love, which no teacher, no intellectual teacher can give you that.
Yeah.
Okay. It was an energetic exchange as opposed to either an intellectual one. It was a heart exchange. It was an opening of the heart, an opening of your awareness of existence, of grace, of love, a very different level of the game. Yeah. Yeah.
So in having that kind of a relationship, it kind of negates the need to go deep in the weeds with various like metaphysical ideas or detailed like doctrines
It depends.
or scriptures.
I mean, there are some people who are jnanis. Jnanis are those who, jnana yoga is coming in through the mind. It's using the mind to go beyond the mind. So there are people who are very much attached to using their minds as a way to further their being. And so, yes, people, do incredible amounts of study and learning and things like that if they feel the need to do that. And there are others who are willing to go purely on bhakti, which is the connection through the heart rather than through the mind. Of course, eventually they all come together.
Yeah.
But it's just sort of a personal, way you're pulled. And sometimes you may really dive into studying something. You may suddenly get the urge to, really go through the Ramayana or really, understand what all the pujas mean and what everything means. Or you can just, go in vibrationally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is intellectual study something that you had been interested before, or had you always been kind of interested in like the experiential type of teaching?
Well,
or
after the
guidance?
first time of taking acid,
Sure.
Need I go on?
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what
So-
got me to Maharajji. I mean, the fact that I took acid in 1969 and 3 weeks later, I was at a party. Well, I have to go back. The first time I took acid, I went right into the place where everything is one.
Mm-hmm.
I had been reading Timothy Leary's book, High Priest, and it was the first time I ever heard the words cosmic consciousness. And for the first time in my life, I said, oh, that's what I want. And then I took the LSD. As I came down, somebody handed me the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I said, this is all very interesting. That's exactly what I just went through. And took it again for the next 2 weeks running. And then after the third week, I was at a party and I met a guy who said, hey, want to go meet a saint? Now, 3 weeks before, I would have said, absolutely not. They don't exist. Must be a complete charlatan. But after having done the acid, I was saying, why not?
And then you go and meet Ram Dass, and he's kind of radiating
Glowing.
the same kind of
Yes.
Yeah. Could you explain that first meeting with him? What that was like?
Sure. I mean, so this guy that I met at the party picked me up, David, and we went to New Hampshire, where Ram Dass's father's farm was, and gentleman's farm, I should say. We're talking about, a big house with 300 acres and a golf course,
Wow.
2-hole golf course or a 3-hole golf course, and woods surrounding it. And as we drove up the driveway, Ram Dass was actually standing outside his front door. He must have been seeing who was driving up. And he was wearing, his white robe and barefoot and the beard and doing his mala. And I looked at him, and I hadn't smoked anything and I hadn't dropped anything. And all I could see coming from him was light. And I was speechless. I was literally speechless. And fortunately, David was able to talk to him. And
And
Ram
you're
Dass
just in
said,
awe.
I was just like, I can't believe this. I'm straight and I'm seeing this guy totally with light coming from him. So Ram Dass said to us to go walk around the woods and meet the people that were there. And that evening we'd all get together and talk. And so we started walking around, and there were only about a dozen people living there at the time. And we're talking about living in the woods, in tents in the woods. And each one I met, there were these strange people. Each one I met was going, Namaste. I had no idea what they were talking about or what they were doing. But I knew them. I knew these people, and it was driving me crazy. It was like, why do I know you? Where did you go to school? Where did you go to camp? Why do I know you?
Wow.
I had found my tribe,
Yeah.
And these are still the people I'm closest to today. But it's it was an extraordinary experience,
So
and the next day we moved in.
Yeah. So when you're living there, what do you do on a daily basis?
Oh, that summer, the summer of
Sure, yeah.
'69 at Ram Dass's, which was the only time this happened. So, because by the next year he was way too well known, and it would have been way too many people. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
basically, we'd get up in the mornings and have a muti gathering. Muti was some tea that Ram Dass had come up with, and we'd get together and have tea. And then people just did various things during the day. They, practiced. They did meditation out in the woods. Some people were fasting. Every night we'd get together with Ram Dass in the barn and talk. He would talk. I mean, that first night, the first day I met him, when we all got together that night in the barn and talked, Ram Dass was telling about how he'd taken thousands of acid trips, and you still had to come down. But he went to India and he found that there were ways to go there without drugs. And I went, I'm in. Get me to that place. Yes.
So that introduced you to Maharajji when he was talking about
that was the introduction to Maharajji, and from then on, my life was in a totally new direction. It's sort of like I was plucked here, put there, and that's where I've been ever since.
And did he gave you a picture, didn't he? He gave you a picture
He gave
of
me a
Maharajji,
picture, and he gave me a mala, which is what the story, that after that summer, and I was, about to start working so I could make money to go to India, which was my new plan in life at that point.
to go meet
But
him.
I had a visit with an old college friend, and we split a tab of acid that all split on my side. And I had some extraordinary initiatory experience. But after I left her place, I was still high. I was still high the next day. And I was starting to go through very much lower astral planes of, people reaching up for help. It was starting to get a little scary and a little uncomfortable. And so I sat before that little picture that Ram Dass had given me that summer, clutching my little mala that he had given me that summer, and saying to Maharajji, I'm scared and you've got to help me. I'm scared and you've got to help me. That was my mantra. And suddenly the picture sort of dissolved in light, and I could see Maharajji moving there. I could see him in this picture, alive. And it was only for like seconds that it happened, but it was enough for me to relax and go through the rest of the experience. And after that, I talked to his picture all the time. I got a much bigger picture. I put it up on my wall, and I developed this relationship with him where I would actually see him sometimes in the picture. And I asked him everything, and I never told anybody I did this because you just don't tell people that you talk to pictures, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, but when I got to India and I was finally with Maharajji at the very first darshan, darshan is being in the presence of. So the very first time I was in his presence, one of the things he said to me is, "You used to talk to my picture all the time. You asked many questions." So basically, he was verifying that, yes, that was him in that photo all that time.
That's so like those stories are so crazy.
And that's
And
why,
supposedly he would do that
yeah.
all the time.
And that's why I wrote Whisper in the Heart, is because I knew the possibility of having these experiences with him without him being in the body, without him,
Yeah.
without being with him. Yeah.
So when you think about Maharaj,
Yeah.
you write about him in a book. What is it exactly that you're talking about? Because it's not just Maharajji in the physical form. Then, like, there's
No.
something else that transcends those kinds of boundaries.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it goes back to that old saying of God, Guru, and self are one. And so after he left his body, and after I can't say got over it because that took a long
Right.
time.
Yeah.
It was shocking and it was very, very upsetting. I mean, it was losing, your most incredible connection,
Yeah.
to it all. Was discovering a relationship with him not as an external being, but internally. So that just trying to live by the few teachings he did give, which were very, very simple. I mean, we were talking about love everyone, feed everyone, which is serve everyone, really, and remember God. And the corollary, which is tell the truth. You follow those four things, that's all you need.
Yeah. So his idea
Yeah.
is that, like, you kind of lay out these
Yeah.
foundational principles, and then each person, it's up to them to kind of figure out how that maps to the context of their life.
Right, absolutely. I mean, Krishna Das does it through chanting.
Yep.
Danny Goleman did it through the realm of psychology and mindfulness and the brain. Other people have done it, whether they're selling real estate or, whatever they're doing. It doesn't matter what you're doing as long as you're attempting to live a dharmic life. You're attempting, to follow a path. Yeah.
When you first had that experience with him, with the picture, and then later on, he brings that up when you meet him. What did you make of that? Like, how did you reconcile that with, like, were you somebody who was always kind of open to those kinds of things, or was that really earth shattering?
Oh, it wasn't earth-shattering. No, it was just, I think I expected it of him. I mean, Ram Dass had always said he knows everything. He knows everything about you. You're sitting there in front of him. He knows literally everything about you. And there it was. And it was not just on the physical plane. Obviously, after experiencing, having psychedelic experiences where you know that this 3D physical world that we live in is not the only thing that is. That, that there is a realm beyond science.
Yeah.
That there are, as far as we know, let's put it that way.
Right.
Yeah. That there are other planes of existence that, I mean, he let us know, Maharajji let us know over and over again that he knew everything about us. And he did it in very subtle ways. That even if you were sitting in a crowd of people, he could say something to you that seemed very light on the surface, but that was exactly hitting something you were dealing with at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, my friend Radha, who was there at the same time I was, and she was married at the time, and she had one night back at the hotel that we were staying in Nainital and going every day to Kenji, to where Maharajji's ashram was, she had a big fight with her husband one night. And the next day, she always offered her food to Maharajji in the morning. But that morning, for some reason, something happened with the toast, and she didn't offer that to him. Sorry, this is annoying me.
You're right.
And when she got to see Maharajji that day, he said to her something about, well, you didn't offer me the toast, but nothing about the fight. You know what I'm saying? So, but if he knew about the toast, he certainly knew about the fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was that.
Why do you think he did that?
Well, I would never attempt to even begin to think of why he did or said anything.
Yeah.
I mean, he came out of, think of it like a pyramid. You know the big steps on the sides of the pyramid in Gaza, right? That if you're standing down on the bottom step, you can only see like out in front of you. But if you're standing up at top, you can see everything. So from where I'm standing compared to where he's standing, I don't question what he's seeing.
Yeah. What was living with him like? Was that similar? Like, was it a similar daily way of living to when you were with Ram Dass for a little bit? Was Ram Dass kind of mirroring that way, or was it
only
different?
In the fact that during those times I wasn't, going to a job. I wasn't working. Mm-hmm. In other words, the year in India, I had saved up a certain amount of money from working after I met Ram Dass so that I could live in India for a year. You got to understand, we're talking about I saved $1,200. $600 was my round trip, airfare, and $600 was to live on for a year.
And that's living where he was.
Yeah, in India. Yeah. And of course, we followed him. He didn't stay in one place.
Okay.
So we spent time with him up in Kenji. We spent time in Vrindavan. Oh, sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Let me just shut that off. Okay.
You're good.
We spent time with him in Vrindavan. We spent time with him in Allahabad. Some people found where he was when he was visiting Bombay. He moved around a lot. Yeah.
What did he travel for?
To see, to be with different devotees in different areas. Yeah. Anytime he showed up someplace, suddenly the word would go out and people would start arriving.
You write about, in the book, you write about temples and ashrams and a special feeling that you get from certain sacred spaces. Mm-hmm. When you're leaving a place like after you lived with him and you go back, how do you kind of maintain that momentum or that feeling that you had over there in daily life when it's so easy to like get wrapped up in like hustle and bustle and kind of lose it?
That's the path.
Yeah.
There it is. How do you live in the world and maintain, your spiritual connection? How do you live? That is the whole path. And coming back was hard. It was really, really hard. We holed up for 6 months and tried not to have the world touch us,
Yeah.
But you get over that. You have to, because you start having kids, you start having to have jobs, you start, the world is there. Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
I've heard Ram Dass talk about struggling with that when he would come back, and he had lists of all these different things that would bring him down, like mm-hmm. cities or certain interactions with various people and things like that. Did you struggle with that for a while?
Well, yes. As I said, for 6 months we didn't leave. Mm-hmm. I remember that when we came back, my mother-in-law gave me this beautiful pair of leather gloves, and I was horrified that anybody would think of leather. From the sacred cow,
Yeah.
It took a while be less, to be more inclusive, shall we say. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have practices on a daily basis for kind of like keeping those principles in
Well,
mind?
many of us who had been with Maharajji had also done these 10-day retreats with Goenka on Vipassana meditation. And that became very, we sort of have very close Buddhist cousins, shall we say. And a lot of our friends have become the mindfulness teachers, or the ones that brought it to America, like Sharon Salzberg and Jack, Cornfield and Joseph Goldstein, and, people that we had met and knew from India. Yeah, because we would run into them at Bodh Gaya, taking a course from Goenka. So that became a very, I wouldn't say universal practice, but a lot of people in the Maharajji satsang do, or at least have been trained in Vipassana meditation and mindfulness. Yeah. Yeah.
And that would kind of keep you in
And
that state that you had.
And that's one state. And then the other is chanting.
Yeah.
Chanting became a very big part of all our gatherings, all of our time together was kirtan. That's
Yeah.
how we would get together, was through kirtan. Yeah.
Could you explain that practice pretty quick? I've just recently become introduced to that in Krishna Das. It seems really really interesting. Could you explain what that's about?
Well, he really explains it really well in Chants of a Lifetime in his book. But basically, he always talks about it as planting seeds, because all the chants that you're doing are in Sanskrit, and they're at a vibrational level of spirit. And so by continually tuning into that, you're planting seeds. You're planting Ram, 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 Ram. You're planting all of that, and opening your heart. Kirtan is a lot about heart opening.
You mentioned retreats. Is that something that you're a big proponent of taking time where you completely separate and like fully focus
Absolutely.
on? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Any time that you can do something like that, I think it's really worthwhile
Yeah.
to, get away from our constant screens, just to get away from screens for a while, phones
Yeah.
and computers and tablets and TVs. And I mean, we have so much information that's pouring into us all the time now, that to take a break from that is really vital, to not think that is the way you're connected to the universe. Yeah.
Do you have ways of working that in, like in daily life, where and it's rather than so you have the method of like going out and completely doing a retreat? Are there ways of doing that like at home?
Well, yeah, there have to be. I mean, the
Yeah.
pandemic showed us that, didn't it?
Right. Yeah. Well, it amplified the screens though.
Well, that's true too. But meditation practice, I think, is probably the one that, you can sing at home by yourself. You can meditate at home by yourself. You can do all of that. It's, you don't have to go anywhere, but you do have to get a little more mindful about your screen usage. Yeah. And if everything you're doing is plugged in, then, take a day and unplug. Just take one day
Yeah.
and unplug. Yeah.
With sacred spaces for people who don't have like access to some kind of a place like that, like you have Neem Karoli Baba's ashram and like various temples and things like that. Have you found ways where you can kind of like set up an environment at home that's conducive to that same kind of feeling?
Well, sure. I mean, certainly setting up an altar helps, where you have some place in your physical surrounding that acknowledges spirit, that acknowledges that connection, and even just as a reminder, that that's a good thing to do. And, if you have a picture of beings that mean something to you, you can put them up. You can put up, rocks, flowers, it doesn't matter. But something that indicates that you recognize your connection to that world. Yeah. And then if you can meditate, even 5-10 minutes a day, just sit there and feel that connection. Yeah, of course you can do things at home. Yeah.
When Maharajji passed, it seems like that was very hard on a lot of people who were very close to him, including yourself. What was it like afterwards, like adjusting to that transition?
It was terrible. I mean, some people had a much harder time than others. Krishna Das talks about it all the time. He talks about 10 years of misery and how he finally got out of it, which is his whole story. So I won't go into that. For me, it was simpler in that, he died in 73. Maharajji left in 73, and I had a child in 74. So immediately my attention was taken up rather full time.
Yeah.
So that that made it so I couldn't wallow in any sort of grief.
With something like Whisper in the Heart, where you're showing all these different ways of how people who didn't meet him were still able to connect with him. Pete Holmes talks about like the spiritual FOMO of not meeting the person that so many other people got to meet.
Right.
What are some ways, and you outline this in the book for those who haven't gone through it yet, what are some ways to, I guess, introduce yourself to a figure like that and kind of get in touch with someone like that if you'd like to?
Well, of course, one of the ways, as I said, is through photos, which is certainly how I met him before I ever went to India. And there's a section in the book which is about photos. There's a section about people who have met him in meditation. They've had experiences while they've been meditating, that have connected them to him. Chanting is another way. These things that we've talked about, that a lot of people are attracted first to the chanting and to how they feel in that space, and only later come to, connect it to Maharajji. Let me see. What are the other ones? There are ones, through books. I mean, I've had people, tell me that they saw Maharajji's picture in Love Everyone, and that prompted experiences for them. It's like, or they've read something that suddenly opened their heart. There are times he just shows up out of nowhere, and people have no idea who he is, and he changes their lives. I mean, that's really extraordinary when those things happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stories about people who claim to have encountered him or met him before even figuring out who he was, and then later on they see a picture of him or something, and they're like, "Oh, that's who that was."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Going to the temples and ashrams, being in those spaces have opened people up. That's another route. Ram Dass, a lot of people have come into this because of Ram Dass. So that's another whole category of a way to get in there, as people get interested in Ram Dass and how he does things and says things. And then pretty soon they're wondering, well, who is this Maharajji he's always talking about?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Retreats, going on a retreat, that's another way where you've quieted down enough and descreened enough so that you can, connect on another level. That's another way. Some dreams are a big way. He shows up and my neighbor, I live in an apartment building, and 2 doors down, this neighbor came by and said, because she'd seen a picture of him that I have, and she said, he just showed up in my dreams. Okay. And sometimes it's just people crying out for help, and he'll show up. Yeah.
Is that always in the form of what he looks like, or is that just one form of Maharajji, and it can show up in many other ways because it's something
Some
bigger than
people
that?
have seen him where he's appeared much younger. Um, but usually, I mean, he's recognizable as who that being was when he was here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, dreams
Yeah.
are an especially interesting topic related to this. What do you make of some of those experiences? And I've talked to certain people who do depth psychology and lucid dreaming and things like that, and then they think that there's certainly some kind of something else that you get access to when you have that level of altered state of consciousness. What are your thoughts on dreams?
I wish he would show up in some of mine. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and for writing this book. Like I'd said to you before, I'd heard of Maharajji, but I hadn't explored him very much, and I find these concepts very interesting. And I'm going to spend more time learning about him. I'll go through and read the first one that you wrote, because it seems like that was kind of a prequel to Whisper in Your Heart.
Yeah,
which would
really.
provide good context. So I did it backwards a little bit, but we'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah. So thank you for being my gateway into that. I'm fascinated in learning more about this. So I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And let me know anytime you got questions.
I will. Thank you.
Okay. Ram Ram.